upbeat. I wasn't expecting that. I think you probably say that more often. I wasn't expecting it. Yeah, okay, all right. So we can move on to our reading now, the sermon. Okay, so this is Matthew 5:46-48. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same. And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same. You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. And next is an excerpt from Reverend Stone Young Moon from September 12, 2005. What is the secret to accomplish this? It can only be accomplished by the power of true love, when we love our enemies more than we love our own children. Okay, so today we're blessed to listen to the words of Mr. Eli Lowe. So without further ado, let's welcome him on up.
Thank you, Brendan. I just want to say, I think that upbeatness of the lead singer was a little disconnected from the upbeatness of the song. That was a minute.
The spirit was there.
The spirit was there, yeah.
Brandon, it wasn't here.
So what I wanted to talk about today is what I titled the standard of true love. And true love is always a topic I like to talk about because I think it's something we're all striving for, we all want, right? We're all trying to understand what is true love. And of course, there's a very romanticized version of true love that we see kind of in movies and we probably culturally think of. I can give an example of one of my favorite movies. For those of you that don't know, I really love the movie Princess Bride, right? And true love is kind of the central theme of that movie, right? And spoiler alerts if you haven't seen it, and I recommend everyone watches it. But the main character, in the beginning of the movie, they fall in love, and just a poor farm boy and the farm girl, and he doesn't have any money to get married, so he runs off, and then he gets captured and killed by pirates. And she's so heartbroken, and she promises never to love again. And then in her little kingdom, there's a prince, and he can pick whoever he wants to marry. And because she's the most beautiful woman in the land, he picks her. She doesn't care, so she can't say no anyway. So that's like they're engaged to be married. And then turns out her true love didn't die. And he comes back and he's kind of wearing a mask, and he's a little bit upset that his true love is engaged to someone else. And they have this conversation, right? And he says, and she doesn't know it's him. So he's like, oh, did you run off the next day when you found out your fiance died to this prince? And her answer was like, I died that day, right? And then, some other things happen, and they finally find out that they're reunited and they're so happy. And he goes, why didn't you wait for me? And she says, well, because you were dead. And he goes, death cannot stop true love. You can only delay it for a while, right? It's kind of real cheesy. Luckily, the movie's also a comedy, so they kind of add a comedic element. But it's a good kind of view of true love. Like, two people, they love each other, and nothing else matters, and nothing else can stop it, right? Some kind of sense of destiny that, like, love is real and unbreakable, right? And it's a very big contrast to what True Father says is true love, right? Or even, Jesus setting the original standard of love being love your enemies, right? Where anyone can love the person that they fall in love with, or that that they like spending time with, right? That doesn't change anything. That doesn't make people special. That's kind of the default. But Father's putting out a standard, and that was from the Peace Road messages. That was, Father was doing the world tour, and that was the start. That's when he actually launched UPF. He launched it on that. What is the standard of true love? And it's to love. In that speech, he actually said, love my enemy more than my own children. In another speech, he also said, love the children of your enemy more than your own children. And even when I read that, back in 2005, I didn't have children yet. And I just remember thinking, that's an impossible standard, right? Like how, that just seems like nobody can do that. Like that, love your enemy seems like somewhat possible. You can be forgiving, you can try to be empathetic and compassionate and understand them. Maybe you still have to, defend yourself, and maybe you still have to fight your enemy, but you can still love them, right? That they kind of can justify it. Another famous quote I read once was, yes, you should love your enemy, but not before they are hanged, right? That's kind of like, you can still love someone and still, be in conflict with them, right? But that's not what your father's saying. Your father is saying, no, you have to love them as if they're the most important person to you, or even somehow more than that. And yeah, it's impossible, right? It's impossible, except I really believe that Father actually was able to do that and give that as an example. And so there's two examples I want to give where I feel like Father is not just saying this as like some kind of hypothetical way to live, but it's something that he really kind of practiced in his day-to-day life. And the first example is when Father visited Kim Il-sung and embraced him. And I think, we see those pictures and, Father looks very happy and Kim Il-sung looks, happy, and they're holding hands, and, it's the official photo. And it's also quite impressive because it's like, okay, like, we talk about peace and Father's building bridges, and we think of it kind of as like a political accomplishment in one way, a religious and political accomplishment, a standard in diplomacy, things like that. And then Father went on to, there was a church-run business in North Korea, and there were very strong relationships. But from Father's personal perspective, I think we often miss the fact that this North Korea is Father's home, right? When Father went to North Korea, there were two living sisters that were there that greeted him as part of the kind of official reception, right? So we had family that was still alive in North Korea. And because of, Kim Il-sung and his regime, he was never able to meet them. There were family members who passed away in North Korea. His own parents passed away in North Korea. And it's because of this man. Like, it's undeniable that Kim Il-sung did not allow the North Koreans to travel, to reunite with their families. So, when I watch the kind of testimony of Father's visit to North Korea, that really stands out, that he had living family that was there, and they probably only talked briefly, and then that was it, right? And another thing Father did is he went to his parents' grave, right? So again, he wasn't there when his parents passed away, and he wasn't even able to be in any way involved in honoring his parents, and probably didn't even know when it happened. And so he went to the grave. As far as I know, Father never went back to North Korea. Or maybe he did, maybe there were other secret trips or something. But officially, Father only got to go that one time. So on a very personal level, Kim Il-sung really prevented Father from being connected to his family, and also very much hurt his own family, right? And there's also, I don't know how many people know this, but there was a North Korean kind of agent that was caught by the CIA that was trying to blow up Father's family home in Boston, where Shu's mother and the kids were staying. So again, that came from Kim Il-sung. That wasn't some random rogue person being like, yeah, let's try to assassinate Reverend Moon. It's because at the time, Father was the most vocal anti-communist Korean, right? And so Kim Il-sung, being a communist and believing communism is, a global community that he has to protect, saw it as his responsibility to kind of assassinate Father, or assassinate Father's family, and kind of attack Father directly, right? So, this is, again, a very personal thing that Kim Il-sung is doing directly against Father. And then even from like a broader perspective, Father cares about his nation, cares about his countrymen, and it's painful for him to, I'm sure it was painful, and painful for him now to see North Koreans suffering and kind of oppressed and, under this terrible regime. Like, I think there's a danger in seeing Father embrace Kim Il-sung for us to kind of assume or forget that Kim Il-sung is a bad person, objectively. Right? He's a dictator. He has people killed, right? He controls a country in a way that caused genuine human suffering. And not only that, but it continues through his lineage, through his family. So for Father to go there and to embrace Kim as a brother, and that's really how Father went. Father talks about his conversation with Kim Il-sung, and it's very much as if he's meeting an old friend, right? As if he's talking to his brother who he hasn't seen in years, and that's the heart he went. I don't think that's something that can actually even be faked, especially with the context of the relationship between the two people, right? And, if anyone could be classified as an enemy of Father, it would have to be Kim Il-sung, right? It's like the person that has probably directly caused Father the most suffering. Never mind even the fact that when he was in jail, he was personally jailed by North Korea and beaten and left for dead, right? So this is the background that Father has when he's going to meet Kim Il-sung. And he's bringing his wife with him. There's a chance they just get arrested and killed, right? Like this is, but that's not what's important. What's important to Father is this standard of love, right? This ability to love everyone as if they genuinely are the most important person to, right? And I'm sure when Father met Kim Il-sung could feel that, right? And it was so impactful that even on Mother's 80th anniversary, and as far as I know, they never went back to Korea. They never met again in person. But at true Mother's 80th anniversary, Kim Jong-un and the North Korean regime personally sent like a gift and a bouquet of flowers. Like that relationship is still there, right? And the North Korean regime is still an evil regime. This isn't to downplay how bad they are. It's to emphasize that the standard of love is above even how evil the North Korean regime is, right? How evil a person North Korea was. They're still, in many ways, children of God, right? They have that capacity to become God's children. And that's what Father is loving and reaching out for. So, again, I think, I say it's an impossible task, but Father shows through his actions that it can be done. And then the second example I wanted to give, and this might be a little more controversial, but growing up as one of the kind of older second gen and listening to kind of my parents' age testimonies, especially about the kind of early 70s, the persecution of the church, the Madison Square Garden, Yankee Stadium, like these were, when I hear my father and mother's testimony, this is, when they joined the church, they were most inspired and, they were living with other members, but also they were very, very close with Father, and especially the generation right above that, my dad's spiritual mother and the city leaders and the state leaders, right? Father was always with the members. He spent more time with the members than his own family. And I feel very much that, all the first generation members and leaders, they got more of Father's love than his family, than his own kids, right? And in many ways, if you think about it, like I'm very grateful for that. I feel that Father really took care of my parents. And when I hear first generation testimonies, they joined the church because of that, because Father did, because they could go and listen to him in person. He was investing constantly his time into the member, right? And actually that was even true for the earliest leadership, right? When Father was in a little mud hut, right? People would go and he would talk to them all day, right? And so they stayed, they could feel that love and they stayed. But in a way, literally, the parents of those members were enemies. They were actively trying to hurt the church and slander Father. And my own grandparents, right? They were very aggressively negative against the church, and a lot of first generation had that experience, right? And so it's something like when I meet, a lot of people are very critical of the church leadership, and obviously people make mistakes, but because I've had an opportunity to kind of meet a lot of the church leadership right under true parents and speak to them, I have a lot of respect for them, a lot of love for them, because when you speak to them, despite any of their shortcomings, they were really loved by true parents, and they're really loyal because of it. And you can see that they're sincere in that realm, in that area. They genuinely, care about true parents and will follow true parents, right? So in many ways, we are the results of that standard of love, the ability of true parents to love the children of their enemies more than their own children. And it's something that I really try not to forget. And I always try to think about in my life of faith. I'm here because true parents really took care of the members. And so everything the members benefit from being in the movement, from hearing the principle, from hearing the church, that would not exist. My parents would not have joined the church if true parents weren't doing it. And the best example is my dad's spiritual mother. My dad's spiritual mother was the first member in Massachusetts, I think in all of New England, right? And she has some amazing firsthand testimonies of being a father, right? And because of that, she was able to find my father out in the middle of a hut, being a hippie with some hippie name, right? In someone's like backyard, right? No one else would have found him, right? He was literally like, I'm a hippie, I'm part of nature, I don't want anyone to talk to me. You can visit me, but don't live with me, right? Like that's who he was, right? And somehow she found him, right? And she would go visit him, and even if she wasn't there, she'd leave a little gift. And my point is that heart and attitude she had, it was possible because also she had that direct experience with father and mother, right? It's kind of a chain reaction. And I remember that, and it's kind of important for me in my life of faith and my identity. It's why I'm here, right? So again, even though being very honest and objective, the true children make a lot of mistakes. I have a lot of kind of understanding and forgiveness and leeway, even though I completely disagree, right? I feel like, I owe them a little bit, right? Or maybe a lot. And I try to keep that in mind and try to incorporate that in how I live my life of faith. So even though we have this example from Father, to me, it's still an impossible standard, right? And I can't say it's an impossible standard because I've seen someone live according to it, but I really feel it's an impossible standard for me, right? It's like, it's such a difficult and painful thing to ask a parent to do, to try to love someone as much as they love their own kids or more than they love their kids, right? And if I'm very, very honest, I don't know how to do it, right? It's just not, it's not something I know today, right now, how I can do that, right? But the question is, well, then why? The other question is, what's the motivation? Why would someone make that sacrifice and do something so difficult? And again, I always remember the story of Father and the Bee when he was a kid. And I don't even know if it's a true story, but it's an amazing analogy, right? Where Father was observing a bee drinking nectar from the flower, right? And, he was a curious kid, so he tried to pull it out of the nectar and it wouldn't budge. So he just pulled harder and then he pulled it in half, right? And that impacted him. But it also, he uses that as an analogy for what the love of God is like, right? It doesn't matter how hard people pull you away. When you feel the love of God, it's almost that it's more important than your own. It's more important than being ripped in half, right? And so for me, the only way it's possible is that obviously that must be the love that God has. Like that must be what it takes to find God's love, to have that kind of complete and unconditional, absolute love for everybody and everything. It takes that kind of that step, right? You have to be able to love the way God loves in order to then feel that level of love. So it's that is what perfection is, right? And I think it's very telling that until I looked it up today, when we talk with Christians, they're always like, you can't be perfect. Only Jesus can be perfect. Only God can be perfect, right? But in that quote that we read in the beginning, Jesus talks about perfection in the context of being able to love this, being able to love your enemies, right? That is perfection. That's what the definition in a way. So when you are capable of loving the way God loves, right? Doesn't mean, like everything you do on earth is perfect and you get 100% score on every test you take and, you're a savant and, you always make $1 billion every time you try anything, right? Because, a lot of people look at Father and like, well, he kind of made a dumb decision here or dumb decision here in business. We tried this and it didn't work. No, perfection is really the standard of love, right? And it's difficult, and we know that it takes time, and we know there's a process. So I, like I said, I don't have that standard of truth. So I try to think, well, how can I get there? Right? And so I have some ideas. We're taught the principle. We try to practice these things. So I'll share a couple kind of thoughts on that, and then I'll wrap up my service. But obviously, principle talks about the 3 stages of growth and, taking things kind of step by step. We can't turn around tomorrow and love everybody because actually, we don't even have that ability inside of ourselves, right? So obviously the first level of love is ourself, right? And society always focuses on self-love. You have to love yourself, love other people, right? And that's actually 100% true, right? In many ways, that's the first blessing, to have mind-body unity, to be honest with yourself, to understand the parts of yourself that you don't like, right? And to either accept them and love them because they are who you are, or to change them because they're not who you are. They're a part of your fallen nature. They're part of you that is not who you want to be. So self-love is the first challenge, right? It's the first step in being honest and kind of unifying your mind and body is to really understand who you are, right? And to really love the parts of yourself that are who you really are and change them. And of course, the next step is then loving other people. You start that with your siblings. It's all kind of, the brother and sister love, as I always understood it, is to try to love as many people as possible, right? Because it's a very giving love. It's a very flexible love, right? You can, as a brother and sister, you can love anyone, right? And it's a good way to start that heart of loving everyone. And also, the more different types of characters you can love, the more able you are to digest any type of person, well, then you're much more ready for the next really challenging love, which is having a spouse, husband and wife, because then it's like loving yourself, but now it's like 3-dimensional because you have to love all the good things about yourself and understand the bad, and then you have to do that for someone else while they're trying to do it for you, right? And that's a lifelong challenge, and this isn't going to be a matching or blessing sermon, so I'm going to skip over that for today, because that can be a whole nother service. But it's a challenge. It's a very crucial part of your growth in life, right? But of course, then from there comes children, and you have to love your children and care for your children. And the sad thing is actually, because of the way the world is, a lot of people can't get there. And one of the most tragic things is when you see families where the parents aren't able to express love to their children, or the children don't feel it. And so even that for some people can be a challenge, but where in an ideal world that should be automatic, right? But again, like the quote about loving yourself and loving the people who are nice to you, Will the Gentiles do the same? The tax collectors get a really bad rap in the Bible. Probably deservedly so. Like, let's no one likes paying taxes, but I think there's something to it. But loving your own family, loving your own spouse, loving your own children, everybody, well, not everyone, but everyone can and usually does try to do that, right? That's not the standard of love. That's the kind of baseline of love. But who can you love outside your family, right? And that's when we start getting into the challenge of Father's standard, right? Loving the children of your enemy more than yourselves. And that's why, a church community is very powerful. It's a good practice ground. I don't think anyone here are enemies, or at least hopefully no one's killed any of my family members. So you're not too high level of enemy. Maybe mildly annoying is as high as it gets. So it's the first way to really practice loving people that you normally wouldn't want to love, right? And I think that is the first step, is actually finding people that are annoying to you, right? To be able to love people that your kind of first instinct is, I'd rather not be around this person, right? And that is a challenge. That's when it starts to get difficult. I think you almost have to be seeking that out. If we're serious about the standard of finding that love that is the bee to nectar love, right? That's God's true source of love, then that is one of the first steps, right? And I remember when I was preparing, for Matching and Blessing, you naturally look around and be like, did I get matched to that person? Did I get matched to that person? And it would always be the person I say, no, I don't think I can get matched to that person. And I would tell myself, okay, I have to figure out, there's something there. There's something about that person's character that I need to understand. I need to somehow connect to that person and understand what it is about them and what it is about me that makes me like not want to be anywhere near them, right? Or not really want to talk to them or avoid them. So communities are really good practice ground for this type of love, right? And so it's obviously then, it expands outside of church community, because a church community, you at least have a common base, you do things together, you see each other regularly, and then you kind of have other community environments where you can practice this, right? And then of course, there's kind of a national level, there's national cultures that are weird, cultures that are strange. It's also why it's very, our church has a culture of traveling, but not just traveling, but going and living, doing mission and intermingling and understanding other cultures, because actually that's a crucial part of it. Part of the ability to love is the ability to understand and to really be able to connect. So my last point there is, I just encourage people to practice this kind of love, to actively think about how we can love more people and more kinds of people. And I think, actually a lot of times I think love is actually just a side effect. The emotion of love that most people call love, it's a side effect of give and take action, right? And so when we talk about trying to love versus feeling love, I think it's actually making the step to have some kind of give and take action, right? So, something as simple as like, there's a person that you have a hard time with, maybe they're from a different country, you can just even start to understand a little bit about their country, right? With the internet, we have like unlimited access to information. You can study things about a person's background, culture, history, and then the next time you talk to them, you have something as a common base you can talk about, right? I just found in university, because I was studying all these countries, something that was always very helpful is I could like bring up some conflict in their country and kind of ask them what they thought about it. And they'd get real passionate real quick, and it'd be a good way to start the conversation, right? But that's just an example. My main point is to connect to people, you need give and take action. To have give and take action, you need to find a common base. So the power of give and take action, we hear about it all the time. We study the principle, we grow up with it, and it becomes like a background thought and a background noise. But really give and take action is like a key element in our life of faith, in practicing our life of faith, and being able to connect with people, you know. If I'm an extrovert, then I can very easily put off introverts, right? And so I need to practice speaking to introverts and being able to sit down. And one of my best friends is very heavily an introvert, sorry. And he said something to me once that always impacted me. I always remember it, and I always try to practice it. Where he's like, you know, for me, what's really nice is to sit in comfortable silence with somebody. We're like, we don't have to talk, we don't have to fill a space. We can each do our own thing, but we're happy to kind of be together and near each other. And that was something I would never do or think about, right? I'm always talking, I'm always like trying to discuss things. And so it was a very powerful experience in that sense, because it was someone's completely different perspective and completely different view. And I was always very grateful for it. And I always remember, right? And that's a type of give and take action. Give and take action doesn't mean you have to talk to them. Doesn't mean you have to be like actively forcing their opinions. Give and take action can be spending time together and sharing an experience. So yeah, ultimately, the standard we aim for is so high, right? And it feels impossible. And being very, very honest, for me, I feel it is impossible in my life. But I feel at least it's the right standard to move towards. And I should always be moving in that direction. And if I'm successful in moving in that direction, I really believe then other people can move in that direction more easily, right? My own kids, my friends, the community. I feel like to the level we're able to get closer to that standard, it affects everyone, right? And I think that's really the core of Father's teaching, the core of the principle, the core of life of faith is, you know, when we say living for the sake of others, I think that's a simplified way to say this point, right? Loving other people as if they are the most precious person to us. And yeah, that takes practice. That's not going to be done simply. It's not going to be done easily. But I think it is completely worth doing. And so we should, I hope that motivates us to make that effort, even though it's difficult. So on that note, I hope that my thoughts and reflections are somehow relatable. I'll offer a closing prayer. Saram Manashin Hanan Umam. Our beloved and precious Heavenly Parent. As always, we're given an opportunity to come here together as an extended family and to share our thoughts. And maybe even more importantly, after the service, to go down and share time together over a very nice meal that our wonderful sister has prepared. But while we're here and in this Chun Shimon, in this prayer room, we pray that our open hearts can feel a little aspect of your genuine need for a connection with each of us on a very personal level. We know this is a lifelong act of faith, an act of attendance. So we pray that we can never be discouraged or lose hope, but always know that it's a life worth living, an investment worth making, always the investment of heart and energy and love into each other and into those we meet. So grateful for every person who's here, either in person or over Zoom, and pray that as a starting point, we can truly practice these principles of love that true parents have laid out and shown us by example in each and every moment of our lives. We can really be disciplined, and that this can become second nature to us. And when we meet people, we understand them and that we love them and we care for them. No matter kind of what state of life they're in, what need that they may have. And maybe that need is not something we can give. But at least we can give a little bit of our hearts and understanding and compassion. Sometimes people need something more strict. They need to be shown the right way, needs some structure and some discipline. So it doesn't mean that love is always passive. It doesn't mean that we just allow bad actions to happen and continue. But it means also that we're wise in terms of what actions we should take to help people and to grow ourselves. So I report this on behalf of the brothers and sisters here with a very grateful heart. And in my name, in the name of Young Il and Vicky, Love, bless and protect. Thank you, everyone. I'll invite Brendan back up.
All right, thank you very much, Eli. That was amazing. That was heavy in the sense that it's a high standard. Like you mentioned in 2005, you read that, you thought that's impossible. I mean, now at my stage in life, I read that quote about loving your enemies more than you love your own children. That's, to me, that's heavy. But like you said, you know, it's heavy, but it's inspiring. We have training grounds where you can practice true love, community, family, even with yourself. So it's a step-by-step process. There's a Chinese proverb, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So, you know, it's a one thing at a time kind of thing. Yeah, thank you. So we can move on now to our closing song, which is When I Behold the Lord.
So dies the world of sinfulness.
Beautiful. So now we can move on to announcements. So I believe you have a monthly membership meeting today at 1 p.m. So I did read the email sort of correctly. Yeah, so monthly membership meeting at 1 p.m. Some controversial issues being discussed. No, I'm joking. There's propositions of giving the brothers room up. So if that's something you're interested in, you come to the monthly membership meeting. Other things are also being discussed as well. You have an amazing lunch being prepared by Rose. The food's not free, please pay for it. I believe she also takes a Revolut as well. So if you don't have cash, that's not an excuse.
Damn tax collected.
Yeah.